I had liked Helen for 12 years. After her 21st birthday, she hated me for 6 years. It wasn't until a truck drove by that she finally rid herself of me. When I woke up again, I had been reborn on the day of her 21st birthday. I decided to run away. This time, I would let her go. And let myself go too. Chapter 1. Augustine. Come over to Helen's house. She just had a huge fight with her parents at her birthday party. And now she's throwing things around. The voice on the other end of the phone was a bit chaotic. My mother hastily said these words and hung up. I had been reborn. Reborn on the day of Helen's 21st birthday. I had been entangled with Helen for 12 years. And after today, she would begin to hate me. But fortunately, nothing had started yet. I opened my phone, scrolled through the school group chat, and found Helen's crush. Helen is at home fighting with her parents. Go check on her. After sending the message, I breathed a sigh of relief. The memories of my past life flooded into my mind. My mother and Helen's mother were close friends. I was a year older than Helen, and we had grown up together, being good friends. In my past life, I had also received a call from my mother and rushed over, just in time to bump into Helen, who was running out of the door. She seemed to have drunk a little, her eyes red, and she kept shouting for me to take her home. Once we got home, she asked me to stay and accompany her for a while longer. I stayed and drank a bit more with her. Though the alcohol hit hard that night, we both didn't drink much, but we both ended up passing out. However, the next day, it was all over the school news wall that I had taken Helen from her birthday party and spent the night with her. There was even a video, showing me helping her into the elevator, into the room, and then never coming out. Helen was the school's beauty, and the rumors were rampant. Although the posts were deleted, people's gossip couldn't be stopped. Let's get engaged. This was what Helen said to me. I still remember that day when she was wearing a white dress. Her head lowered as she said those words, her hands tightly clasped together. Everyone around us knew I liked Helen. It was only natural that we got engaged. I was very happy with Helen's attitude. We were getting married, and there would be countless days ahead where we could be together. I would love her, protect her, and never let her be sad or cry again. During that time, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. Chapter 2. At the engagement banquet, a man who looked somewhat familiar walked in through the door of the banquet hall. Helen's gaze followed him intently. After the party ended, I found Helen hiding in the makeup room, wiping away her tears. Helen, do you have someone you like? You've gotten what you wanted, so stop worrying about me. Her gaze was cold as she spoke, clearly accusing me of tearing her apart from her lover. But for the past 3 years, I had never heard that she liked anyone, nor had I ever heard of her being in a relationship. Although I loved Helen deeply, I never intended to force her into marrying me. Moreover, nothing had happened between us that night. Helen, if you don't want this, I'll persuade my parents to cancel the engagement. Stop pretending. You and your family can decide the wedding date. Helen shot me a glare before standing up and leaving. From that moment, she began her 6-year hatred toward me. The phone on the table rang again, interrupting my thoughts. It was my mother. Didn't I tell you to come? Why is that guy here instead? Now Helen's gone off with him. Your aunt is so mad she can barely stand. Mom, Helen likes him. Of course, she'd want to see him at a time like this. But didn't you always? Love is something you can't force. I'll go over now and take Aunt to the hospital for a checkup. That'll be more reassuring. I hung up the phone and headed to the Ann family's house. This time, I wouldn't be taking Helen away, so nothing like the previous life would happen again. Even if it did, the man was the one she liked, so it would at least be a win-win situation. Before I knew it, I had arrived at the Ann family's home. Some of the guests who had come to congratulate were still there, consoling Helen's parents. I had to hide my emotions, help my mother send off the guests, and then take Ann to the nearby hospital. After finally settling everything, I returned home, and it was already past midnight. Chapter 3. Rubbing my temples. I walked into my bedroom and immediately spotted the photo album on the bookshelf. Even after so many years, just one glance made me want to pick it up. Every photo inside was related to Helen. I flipped open the album. The first page was our first photo together. That was when I first met her at the age of 10. We were standing under a peach blossom tree. She was smiling at me, and I was removing a petal from her hair. At the bottom of the photo, there was a date, a time, and the childish pencil writing, I like you. I still vividly remember Helen's reaction when she saw this album. It was our 2nd year of marriage. By then, she no longer kept the same cold face toward me as she had at the beginning. Occasionally, we'd sit on the sofa together and watch an old movie, until the day she opened this album. Augustine, so this was all part of your plan. You're disgusting. She slammed the door and left, and our relationship once again froze. What had I done wrong? That photo was from when I was just 10 years old, showing my most innocent affection for her. How did anything in it make her feel disgusted? Later, I learned that Helen's hatred toward me was due to the instigation of her lover. Finally, I understood why Helen hated me, but I never had the chance to explain. Or rather, she didn't want to hear a word of it. I considered asking for a divorce, but then the family's financial chain broke. Getting a divorce at that moment would have been kicking someone when they're down. I couldn't be that kind of person, and I couldn't let Helen face the crisis alone. After helping the family through the crisis, I never brought up the divorce again. Besides seeing the elders, Helen never returned home. We had become strangers living under the same roof. The love I had once longed for had completely turned into a business marriage. For a time, I even thought that perhaps this was how things would be with her. Maybe, in some sense, we'd grow old together, until that man appeared again by Helen's side. By this point, Helen had become an important member of the family, and our relationship no longer affected our business cooperation. But clearly, that man was right. Helen still liked him. In a photo sent by a friend, the man was tidying up her slightly disheveled hair, and she looked up at him, smiling. It was just like the first time I met her. Let's get a divorce. After 6 years, I was exhausted. Since the man she liked had returned, I would let her be with him. At least one of us could find happiness. What are you trying to do now? The voice on the other end of the phone was as cold as ever. The two companies had a new partnership recently. I figured she was worried I might use the divorce to breach the contract. It won't affect the cooperation. I thought for a moment and added, let's meet in person to discuss. I didn't call a driver. I drove myself to her company. But in the end, I never reached my destination. When the large truck came toward me, I saw a group of children on the sidewalk. I couldn't avoid them, so I didn't steer away. The car, along with myself, crashed into them, shattering everything. Chapter 4, August. Thank you for taking care of my parents. It was a message from Helen. I frowned. Shouldn't she be with her lover right now? Well, if that incident in the previous life had been arranged by that man, then of course he wouldn't jump into the pit himself. But at this point, I couldn't be bothered to get involved in their affairs anymore. I closed the chat window with Helen and casually removed her from the pinned conversations. Just then, another message popped up. Augustine, I want to start a business. Would you do it with me? The message was from Diego, one of my childhood friends. I paused for a moment, then remembered that Diego had asked me the same question in the previous life. At the time, I was completely out of it, and after dealing with deleting videos and managing rumors, then getting busy with the engagement, that conversation had just fizzled out. Thinking about it, I quickly replied to him, sure, let's go tomorrow. Diego on the other end of the phone clearly didn't react right away. Before starting a business, we need to do some research first. We can't just stay local. How is that starting a business? Got it. If I'm following Augustine, we'll definitely eat well. After chatting a bit more about our ideas, I started packing my bags. As I stood up, the photo album on my lap fell to the floor. After thinking for a moment, I tossed it into the trash can by the desk. The next day, after informing my parents, I left with Diego for S-City. Leaving here was for the business, and also to temporarily get away from Helen. This time, everything between me and Helen ended here, and that was enough. I wouldn't bother her anymore, nor would I spend any more time and energy on this matter. When we arrived in S-City, it didn't take long for Diego and I to spot a good business opportunity. Thanks to the experience from my previous life, I knew exactly what could make money now. Bro, we have everything ready, we just need the funds. Diego scratched his head. Could we really have to go back and ask our parents for money? Just then, Diego's phone rang. Hey, Helen's calling me. She must be looking for you. He raised an eyebrow and nudged me before answering the call. If she asks about me, just say you don't know where I am, I added. Diego paused for a moment, but didn't say anything more. He just went along with what I said. You still like her, don't you? Diego looked at me with confusion. She's got someone she likes now. Do you think I'm the kind of person who'll tear apart a couple? I stood up and patted Diego on the shoulder. I'm going to wash up first. Diego didn't say anything else after hearing this, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw him nearly burn a hole in the screen while texting in the group chat. I couldn't help but smile helplessly. Well, that was fine too. Chapter 5. After a peaceful night's sleep, Diego woke me up at 7 a.m. Bro, someone's willing to invest in us. The investor was Diego's classmate. We met him at a tea house and arranged to talk. My dad wants me to start a business, but I'm afraid I'll ruin the family. I think you two are more reliable than me. Amanda, dressed in jeans and a white t-shirt, looked like she had just rolled out of bed and rushed over. Amanda's father adored her, and not only treated her well but also saw her as the heir he was grooming. But now it seemed like Amanda just wanted to take it easy. Don't worry, if you're with Augustine, you'll eat well. Diego cheerfully handed over tea and water. With Amanda's investment, we had solved the financial problem. Augustine, the clothes you picked are a bit too low-key. Amanda spent some time advising Diego on his outfit, choosing the right clothes, then turned to look at me. Today, we were attending an industry gathering. I checked myself out in the mirror. I was in a sharp suit, looking proper, even with the tie neatly tied. I don't see a problem. We're a team of 3, understand? Amanda tossed something down from upstairs. I reached up and caught it. It was a tie in the same color as her dress. Since Amanda was our investor, I had no reason to refuse her request. As I was tying the tie, the other 2 came down the stairs. Diego was wearing a white suit, with a tie matching Amanda's. Those 2 really looked like a perfect pair. I thought to myself, not bad at all. Now the 3 of us look like we could be secret agents. Diego walked over to me, raised an eyebrow, and mimicked holding a gun. Just you, a secret agent? What's wrong with that? Isn't that how they act in the movies? Watching Diego and Amanda bicker, I couldn't help but relax and smile. This life wasn't bad at all. Though Amanda was the investor, she still followed us around. She was very smart and picked up things quickly. She also gave some very insightful suggestions, which surprised me. No wonder her father wanted her to go out and start her own business. With a mind like hers, she could succeed at anything. At the industry event, we attended as ourselves, not as the children of our parents, like we usually did. The 3 of us were a bit nervous. Chapter 6. What I didn't expect, however, was to see Helen here. After all, it had been nearly 20 years since I first met her, and when I spotted a figure in the distance, I knew it was her. But the person standing beside her wasn't her significant other. Perhaps sensing my gaze, Helen looked over at me. August. Her eyes brightened, as if she were a little surprised. She released the arm of the person she had been holding, lifted her skirt, and walked toward me. This made me a bit dazed. The old version of Helen always seemed like a proud princess in front of me. In the previous life, it was always me who approached her. When she was in a good mood, she'd call me August, but when she wasn't, she would just give a slight nod, acknowledging me. Seeing her walk toward me with a smile in her eyes was a rare sight after so many years. Helen immediately reached out to link her arm with mine. I instinctively stepped slightly to the side, avoiding her. Her expression froze, as if she hadn't expected me to react this way. When she looked at me again, her eyes were slightly red. Hi, Helen. Diego, sensing the slightly awkward atmosphere, stepped forward to greet her. He and I had always been good friends, so he addressed her as Helen as well. Helen ignored Diego and continued to look directly at me, just as she had earlier. Helen, is there something you need? I sighed inwardly, not wanting the atmosphere to become too tense, so I asked. Upon hearing my voice, Helen took a step back, putting a little distance between us. August, could you come back and marry me? When those words left her mouth, not only was I stunned, but Diego beside me was also frozen in disbelief. What was Helen doing? In the previous life, I desperately wanted to marry her, and she hated me for it. In this life, I had let her be with her significant other, and now she was saying she wanted to marry me. Don't you already have someone you like? I spoke calmly, and I was somewhat surprised to realize that when Helen mentioned marriage, my heart didn't stir at all. It turned out that I really didn't like her anymore. No, it's not like that. He's just, Helen stammered. Have you seen my brooch? At that moment, a familiar voice called out. It was Amanda, just finishing a conversation with 2 acquaintances, and she was walking toward Diego and me while holding up her skirt. Helen's expression stiffened a bit. Her gaze shifted from me to Amanda, then from Amanda's face to my tie. Who is this? Amanda, naturally, noticed Helen in front of me and gave her a bright smile. She's the daughter of a close friend of my mother's. Helen. I turned my head to respond to Amanda, then added, didn't you wear your brooch when you went out? Amanda gave me an eye roll and then reached her hand out to Helen. Hello, Helen. I'm Amanda, their boss. Shut up. Do you even understand what a partner is? Diego threw in a sarcastic remark, which made Amanda want to go and hit him. Helen then turned back to look at Diego's tie, and it seemed like she remembered something, letting out a small sigh of relief. Chapter 7. Augustine. What's going on here? After watching Helen leave, Diego and Amanda walked over to me. How would I know? But you didn't even wear the brooch today. I thought you were tangled up in some romance debt, so I came to help you out. Who knew you wouldn't follow my lead? Amanda winked mischievously. What romance debt? Augustine has liked Helen for so many years. Let me count. About. Watching Diego theatrically count with his fingers, Amanda let out a chuckle. All right, stop embarrassing yourself. I never had anything with Helen before, and I won't in the future. I gave Diego a light slap on the back, then became serious. Don't forget the main business today. Right. Over there's Mr. Fong, my dad's friend. Let's go introduce ourselves. Amanda pointed to a man nearby. Diego and I straightened up and walked over. But clearly, you can't escape fate. As soon as the party ended and we had just dropped Amanda off, my mother called. Augustine, your aunt called. She said Helen has nowhere to go. Can she stay at your place for a night? I know you don't want to be with her anymore, but Helen's someone I've watched grow up. My mother sighed. We grew up together, and over the years, She had treated Helen as her own daughter. Though I no longer had feelings for Helen, I couldn't just turn my back on her. Send me the location. I'll go pick her up. I had already blocked Helen's contact, and didn't want to use this situation to add her back. Diego and I picked Helen up downstairs from a hotel. She was still in her evening dress, looking a little cold, hugging her arms to herself as she shivered. When Diego stopped the car in front of her, she was still a little dazed, furrowing her brows. I had no choice but to open the car door and, like usual, invited her in. August, why are you driving this kind of car? Her tone was a little resentful, with a hint of disdain. Diego, who had been smiling while handing her a blanket, paused, his smile fading away. In the previous life, I didn't venture into business, and since Helen always acted like she'd give up everything for love, I never had a chance to notice that she still cared about such things. Helen seemed to catch on to Diego's expression, biting her lip as if wanting to say something, but couldn't bring herself to speak. Why not stay at the hotel? Why come to my place? I glanced at the nearby hotel, which looked like it was arranged by the Yin family. Before, our families always went together when we went out, and you were always by my side. Now, I'm staying at a hotel alone. I'm a little scared. Helen reached out to tug at the hem of my shirt, shaking it slightly, her voice choked with emotion. So, why are you here then? I came to find you. It seemed like my mother had told Helen where I was. Helen, I know you have someone you like. Now that I'm gone, you can be with him. After you left, my dad started setting up blind dates for me. Helen's words took me by surprise. Helen had always been treated like a princess by the Yin family, so why suddenly was she being pushed into blind dates? It was then that I understood why Helen had said she wanted to marry me when she saw me today. To her, I must have been a lifeline. I used to like you, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to marry someone who doesn't like me. The painful memories from the previous life were still vivid. We were like fire and water. How could I let such a thing happen again? No, August, I like you, Helen explained frantically. She didn't seem like she was lying, and that made me even more confused. In the previous life, Helen had been so in love with that guy. How could she have changed her mind so quickly this time? Not only had she changed, but now she was telling me she liked me. She had hated me for 6 whole years because of that man. Had she, too, been reborn? I saw the album you made for me in the trash can. It seemed like she had guessed my thoughts. Helen cleared her throat and spoke up. It was just as I suspected, and I let out a small sigh of relief. You should know why it was in the trash, right? Helen was wrapping herself in the blanket when she froze at my words, tears welling up in her eyes. I handed her a few tissues and adjusted the blanket around her. Since she had been reborn too, it was better to speak openly now. Helen, since you know everything, you should understand that I've never forced you into anything. Now that we have a chance to start over, don't hate me anymore, and please don't think of me as your lifeline. Helen was still sobbing, and I sat next to her. Scenes from the previous life flashed through my mind. Helen coldly telling me to get out of her bedroom. Helen frantically questioning me why I hit her lover. Helen's indifferent gaze during our engagement banquet. Helen only calling my name when she needed help. Helen as a little girl saying she wanted to marry me. Helen smiling at me under the peach blossom tree when we first met. All of these were the proof of my 18 years of love for Helen, as well as the painful 6 years that I could hardly look back on. August. The light from the street lamp streamed through the car window, and although I couldn't see Helen's profile clearly, I knew she was still crying. Yeah, stop crying, Helen. I remained silent for a moment, then added, let's not torture each other anymore this time. The car had arrived. Diego cleared his throat softly. I'll leave now. Find her a room to stay in, and have someone send her back tomorrow morning. I interrupted Diego's words, opened the car door first, and got out. There were still some tasks I needed to finish today. I had to go to a meeting tomorrow and meet with suppliers. As for Helen, if she wanted, she could still go out on secret dates with her lover like she did in the previous life. But this time, it had nothing to do with me anymore. Chapter 8. Helen didn't come looking for me again. Diego occasionally mentioned that Helen had gotten engaged to her lover. Apparently, something had happened in between, but I no longer cared. The company had been thriving lately. Though it kept me busy, it was fulfilling. Diego and Amanda often joked around, but when it came to work, they made a perfect team. As I watched the occasional pink bubbles float between them, I suddenly realized something. Do you like Amanda? During lunch, while Amanda went to get her food, I asked Diego in a low voice. The guy seemed choked by my question, stumbling over his words as if he couldn't form a coherent response. All right, I get it. If the opportunity arises, I'll ask her for you. The moment I said that, Diego's ears turned bright red. Just then, Amanda came back with her food and noticed. Oh, what's going on? Your ears are all red. Normally, Diego would have had some sharp retort, but now he couldn't even say a word. He just kept his head down, eating. Not hearing a response, Amanda grew curious. Augustine. What's going on with him? Feeling horny. Cough cough cough. Diego nearly choked on his food at my remark. Amanda was startled as well, quickly handing him water and patting his back. Watching their interaction, I finally understood. These two were clearly a couple of playful enemies. No need for me to play matchmaker. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye, and the company was slowly settling into a routine. A few obstacles had appeared, but we managed to overcome them. During the celebration banquet, Diego confessed his feelings to Amanda. Diego, usually carefree and mischievous, stood holding a huge bouquet of flowers, his voice trembling with nerves. Amanda smiled, accepting the flowers, and then playfully shoved his shoulder, just like she always did. Then the two embraced. This, I thought to myself, was love. This was how love should be, not the one-sided, torturous, and mutual disdainful kind of love I had experienced in the past life. With those two now officially a couple, their attention turned to me. Augustine, how about letting Amanda set you up with a girlfriend? Yeah, Augustine. I have a friend who's smart and beautiful. Seeing that I didn't respond, Diego dragged a chair and sat next to me. Augustine, I don't really know what happened between you and Helen, but you have to move forward. Exactly, Augustine. You can't seriously want to live alone for the rest of your life, can you? Watching the two of them, I suddenly felt soft in my heart. Although I hadn't thought about dating again before, seeing how happy they were, having someone to love didn't seem like such a bad idea. All right, leave it to you two. I patted both of their shoulders. Everything was different from the past life, but every day felt so much better, until Helen appeared in front of me again. Chapter 9. Augustine. I ran into Helen at the company entrance. Diego looked awkward as he explained. He had gone downstairs to buy Amanda her favorite little cakes, but when he reached the lobby, he saw Helen being stopped by the receptionist. He couldn't pretend not to know her, and I understood that. I gestured for him to go ahead. Diego let out a sigh of relief, closed the office door, and walked out. I then turned my attention to Helen. She was wearing a white dress, and there were some stains on her shoes. She looked a little thinner than when I had last seen her. When she saw me, she straightened her back slightly. August, I'm sorry. I could guess why she suddenly came to apologize after such a long time. Most likely, she had realized that the misunderstanding between us in the previous life had been manipulated by her lover. Maybe, before I died in my past life, I secretly hoped she would realize she had misunderstood me and then feel regret or guilt. But in this life, I truly didn't care anymore. Everything I did for you in the past was my own choice. It's all in the past now. You don't need to apologize. If you must, then it should be to the version of me that's already gone, not the me here now. It's all my fault. Upon hearing my words, Helen trembled, covering her face with her hands. I've only now realized that I love. Just then, the office door opened. I want some grilled meat this afternoon. Before I saw her, I heard her voice. It was Valentina, my girlfriend, and Amanda's best friend. She was kind, smart, and, most importantly, she liked me, and I liked her too. We had been together for half a year, like any ordinary couple, eating together, chatting, and I realized just how much strength a good relationship could bring. Sure, I know a great place for it. I smiled at her, unable to help it. This is Helen, the daughter of my mom's good friend. Seeing Valentina's gaze turn to Helen, I stood up and walked over to her, introducing them. This is my girlfriend, Valentina. Hi, are you joining us for lunch? You must be tired from traveling so far. Helen blinked in surprise, looking up at me, confused about how Valentina knew where she had come from. I smiled knowingly and glanced at the girl beside me. Her eyes were filled with the same joyful smile that I had. Can I have a word with August? Alone. Anything you need to say, you can say it in front of me. I hadn't expected Helen to ask for privacy, but I didn't feel there was anything she needed to hide from my girlfriend. Sure, I'll wait outside. Valentina interrupted me with a smile and left the room. Once the door closed, Helen looked up at me. I love you, August. After you passed away in the last life, I only started realizing that I loved you. In this life, I thought, since you don't like me anymore, I should be with him. But the girl in front of me was crying uncontrollably. In the previous life, she always had a cold expression when facing me, but in this life, it seemed like she was always on the verge of tears. I sighed. Don't you get it? You don't love me. You're just used to me being there for you. Used to my love for you. No, I misunderstood you. Helen, I already have someone I like. I've experienced how fulfilling a good relationship can be. You should find that too. Helen, I hope you can be happy in this life, just like I am. Helen didn't respond, just quietly sobbing. I handed her a few tissues. Do you need me to send someone to take you home? Helen remained silent. You can rest here for now. Someone will come to take you home soon. Goodbye, Helen. I opened the office door, and Valentina was sitting across from Amanda's office. I walked to the door of Amanda's office, where Diego was sharing a small cake with her. The sunset's warm glow was casting a line across the floor, and if I followed it, I could hold her hand. Valentina gave me a sense of tenderness and grace. She was a smart girl. As the sunset light fell on her face, I reached out and took her hand. She suddenly looked at me. How did the conversation go with her? Chapter 10. Well, we didn't talk much. All those past events are behind us now, I said casually, but as I spoke, many images flashed through my mind. Those past events were vivid, yet they felt like fleeting smoke, dissipating in an instant. The sun set, and a gust of wind blew through the air. When I returned to the company, the security guard on duty told me that a handsome man had come to pick up Helen. I nodded, acknowledging the information. That handsome man, no surprise, was James. He was the thorn between Helen and me, the thorn that had torn our childhood friendship apart. That little girl, who used to follow me everywhere and call me August, had hated me for 6 long years. I didn't know if, on the day I died, Helen had shed a single tear for me at my bedside. I lost myself in thought for a while, then sat down at my computer, suddenly receiving an urgent work task. The company had been growing quickly recently, and we were working on a project. We needed to prepare a proposal, and the client was mostly satisfied with the first draft. If we could land this deal, it would take the company to the next level. I was focused when my phone suddenly rang. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Helen. By now, she must have reached her destination. I answered the call, and immediately heard Helen's voice. August, Her voice was choked with emotion. I could sense that she was upset, but I couldn't comfort her. You're there now, right? I cut her off. I'm here, August. James and I are engaged. He came to pick me up to take me to his house. She spoke slowly. I wish you happiness. After I said this, there was silence on the other end. It was a long, quiet silence from both sides. About a minute later, I heard her sobbing on the other end of the line. She was crying hard, but we were already 2 parallel lines, never to meet again. I hung up the phone and blocked Helen's contact once more. I did this to avoid any unnecessary contact between us. It was also out of respect for my girlfriend, Valentina. In my past life, I had experienced an unnatural relationship and marriage. I deeply understood the pain that kind of relationship caused. So, I didn't want to bring any unfair treatment to Valentina. I didn't finish the proposal until around 3 a.m. After stretching lazily, I headed home. Now, I was building a career in S-City, and I had settled down here, feeling at peace. I bought a large house for myself, where I kept 2 cats, one named Tigre, the other named Floor. They, too, were like childhood sweethearts, growing up together in the house I bought. Tigre was the older brother. Floor was the younger sister. They sometimes playfully bicker, but most of the time, they are filled with joy. Most of my time with Helen during our childhood was happy too, but when we ended up together, it led her to hate me for 6 long years. Now, my relationship with Valentina was flourishing, and everything felt more harmonious. Chapter 11. I heated myself a glass of milk, drank it, and planned to go to bed. Both cats ran up to me, rubbing against my arm. After finishing my milk and quickly washing up, I fell into a deep sleep, but who would have thought? The next morning, I was jolted awake by the ringing of my phone. I looked at the caller ID and saw it was Diego. His voice sounded urgent on the other end. Augustine, something's wrong. There's been an accident. Diego's voice immediately snapped me out of my drowsiness. What happened? Our company's deal got stolen. His voice was even more frantic. I furrowed my brows. Stolen? I was taken aback. We had worked so hard for that deal. We had revised the proposal countless times. And just last night, I'd received a call from their project lead saying that some things still needed tweaking. I had planned to send Valentina back first and dive into work to make those changes. I had thought that after a good night's sleep, I'd wake up and sign the deal. The deal was worth a lot. Split into 3 phases, valued at $50 million. If we closed it, we'd have completed a third of the company's annual target. But now, it was taken from us. Calm down. Take it easy. Don't panic, I told Diego. After some reassurance, Diego finally managed to calm down. Augustine, I don't know all the details yet, but it looks like a company called Dawn has stolen our deal. Got it, I replied. You go check out the background of this company. I'll be at the office soon. We'll talk more when I get there. A wave of unease washed over me, but I kept my tone steady. We'd put in a lot of time and effort for this deal, over 1 or 2 months of hard work. Now to hear that someone had stolen it just like that, nobody would be happy about it. All right, Diego said. We hung up, and I quickly got out of bed, freshened up, and headed straight to the office. On the way, I muttered to myself, Dawn, could this be related to Helen? Once at the office, I rushed in. Diego and Amanda were already there, along with several of the company's core management team. Augustine, you're here. Diego greeted me. Mr. Koo, The others also greeted me as Mr. Koo. Amanda nodded at me, but I could see the concern in her eyes. This situation was clearly serious. The rest of the employees in the office were looking our way, but I didn't want to let this issue affect the work atmosphere. Let's head to the meeting room. We went to the meeting room, and as I entered, all eyes were on me. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone's mood seemed a little heavy. Chapter 12. Diego, with his straightforward personality, immediately stood up and said, "Augustine, the company, Dawn, is behind this, and the person behind it is James, the one who's engaged to Helen." As he spoke, Diego seemed hesitant, as if there was more he wanted to say but couldn't. I knew exactly what he was getting at. He was trying to imply that the company called Dawn must have some connection to Helen, but out of respect for me, he didn't continue. Seeing Diego holding back, I spoke up, "Go ahead, keep talking." Diego hesitated for a moment, then said, "Augustine, do you think this could be related to Helen? She's been coming to our company a lot these days." I thought for a second and replied, "It shouldn't be related. We haven't had much contact with her. This order was only known by our internal team. I never discussed it with anyone outside of the company, not even with Helen." I explained the basic situation, and as I spoke, I noticed the shift in everyone's expressions. "Augustine, but that James is despicable. First, he took Helen from you." Diego started, but then his gaze met mine, and he bit back the rest of his words. He turned to me and said, "I'm sorry, Augustine. I just find this guy's actions disgusting." I nodded, understanding what he meant. It wasn't just Diego. I wasn't fond of James either. Diego's words might have sounded harsh, but they weren't far from the truth. In the past life, he had used underhanded tactics to steal Helen's heart from me. Now, in this life, he was trying to steal my business too. I even wondered if the car accident that happened to me in the past life had been planned by him as well. Amanda suddenly shot Diego a sharp look. "If you can't speak properly, just stay quiet. Right now, we need to focus on how to handle this." In the past year, Amanda had gone through a lot in the workplace and had become a sharp, competent professional. Diego, somewhat chastened by Amanda's rebuke, didn't say another word. The rest of the core management team kept their heads down, silent, not offering any comments. The problem was no longer internal. Our communication with the other company had been fine so far. After a moment of silence, I spoke up, "Diego, Amanda, stay behind. Everyone else can go back to their work." The rest of the team nodded and left the room. My gaze shifted to Amanda and Diego. The three of us had worked hard for this company. Its success today was largely due to our efforts. Now, Diego and Amanda were a couple, and everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. But then, this mess with Dawn came out of nowhere. I looked at Amanda. "Amanda, you and Diego investigate the situation with the order. Check if there are any internal leaks within our company. Also, look into Dawn. I'll go meet with Mr. Wong from their company." "Got it, Augustine," Amanda replied. Diego also said, "Don't worry, Augustine. Leave the home front to us." Chapter 13. Seeing that both Amanda and Diego had spoken up, I decided not to waste any more time and headed out. I took out my phone and tried calling Mr. Wong, but the call went through, yet no one answered. The call was connected, but the answer button was never pressed. There could be two possible reasons for this. Either he was deliberately ignoring the call or he was in a meeting and didn't have his phone with him. Given the situation, I felt the first possibility was more likely. He was intentionally ignoring my call. It seemed that the chance of salvaging this matter was slim, but no matter what, I felt I had to try. After some thought, I decided to head to Mr. Wong's company. When I arrived, I was stopped at the front desk. The receptionist asked who I was looking for. I told her truthfully. Then she asked if I had an appointment, and I admitted that I didn't, but that I needed to speak with Mr. Wong urgently. The receptionist, maintaining her professional smile, replied, "I'm sorry, sir, but without an appointment, you won't be able to see Mr. Wong. Please schedule an appointment and come back later." Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel a cold shiver run through me. It was likely that all the effort we had put into this project for the past 2 months was about to go to waste. This was the collective effort of our entire company. Even if there was the slightest hope left, I couldn't give up so easily. I didn't go into the company but waited outside, from morning until finally, I saw Mr. Wong, dressed in a sharp suit, coming down from upstairs. He was around 40 years old but didn't have a large beer belly. In fact, his physique was quite well maintained. When I saw him, I didn't waste any time and rushed over to him. "Mr. Wong, can we talk?" Mr. Wong's gaze landed on me, and the 2 men accompanying him quickly blocked my way. I tried to push through, but they stopped me. "Let him through," Mr. Wong said. At his command, the 2 men didn't dare continue to block me and stepped aside. I approached Mr. Wong. "Mr. Wong, did you have a chance to look at the proposal I sent you last night? Is there something you're not satisfied with? Your proposal is overall fine, but we're not going to give you this order." "Sorry, Mr. Koo, Mr. Wang replied, his tone carrying a hint of apology. What's the reason for your refusal? I won't get into the specifics, but it's not because your proposal isn't good, Mr. Wang said, his gaze shifting to me. Sorry, Mr. Koo, I have a lunch appointment to attend. I'll have to leave now. With that, Mr. Wang walked away swiftly. I watched his retreating figure, momentarily dazed for a few seconds. Coming back to my senses, I realized staying there wasn't going to help. After leaving Mr. Wang's company, I headed back to our office. Once there, I called for a meeting with Amanda and Diego. The meeting was straightforward. I briefly explained the situation and told them that, unfortunately, we likely wouldn't get the order. Secondly, I reassured them that our proposal was still a good one, and we could try finding another company in the same industry to partner with, so all our hard work wouldn't go to waste. Diego nodded. All right, Augustine. Amanda didn't have any objections either. I'll go make the arrangements. After Amanda left, Diego turned to me and said, Augustine, I know why we lost this order. Chapter 14. Diego had a serious look on his face when he said this, which immediately piqued my curiosity. I looked at him and asked, why? I just had someone look into James. This guy doesn't come from money. The only reason he could open this company is because Helen's family invested in it. I suspect he got this order through connections with the Yin family. Diego paused for a moment, clearly hesitant. He looked at me, almost as if he wasn't sure how to continue. I couldn't help but say, Diego, since when did you become so slow? Just say what you need to say. Diego replied, this is still related to Helen. Do you think she might be seeking revenge out of love or hate, trying to strike back at you on purpose? I glanced at Diego. My relationship with Helen wasn't as simple as it seemed. We were both reborn. I knew her past, and she knew mine. In the previous life, we were married. In this life, we weren't lovers, and we certainly weren't a married couple anymore. We had returned to the original state of knowing each other, but now, I had no intention of getting closer to Helen. I didn't want to repeat past mistakes, but Helen, in this life, seemed to want to get closer to me. I didn't quite understand it. Wasn't she supposed to hate me? She should have hated me in the previous life, and yet now, in this life, why was she suddenly trying to approach me? I was confused and didn't know what her purpose was. It probably isn't her. It might be James's doing, I said. I remembered that Helen had never been interested in business matters. She preferred to do what she loved. Diego's anger flared when I mentioned James. If that son of a b*** is behind this, I'll deal with him right now. Diego started to head for the door, but I quickly stopped him. It's no use confronting him now. The priority should be to keep looking for potential partners. Diego nodded, knowing I was right, but still muttered, our company is now at odds with James. This grudge is official. I agreed. It was indeed a grudge, one that had already been brewing. Even in the previous life, James was a despicable, underhanded man. I sat at my desk, trying to gather some information, looking into potential partners to see if we could find another company to collaborate with. At some point, my office phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and saw an unfamiliar number. I typically don't answer such calls, assuming they're just spam or telemarketers. However, to my surprise, the caller persistently dialed again, 3 or 4 times in a row. Seeing this, I finally decided to pick up. I didn't speak immediately, letting the phone ring for a few seconds. After about 3 to 5 seconds, a low voice came through the receiver. Is this Augustine? Yeah, it's me, I responded coldly. This is James. It's nice to finally speak with you, he said, his tone clearly laced with provocation. I was momentarily stunned. After a brief pause, I regained my composure and asked, what do you want? Chapter 15. Oh, nothing special. I just wanted to let you know that I'm now engaged to Helen, and she's my fiancée. I hope you can keep your distance from her, James said, his voice carrying a hint of challenge. I frowned slightly, feeling an unpleasant sting in my chest. The discomfort wasn't about him asking me to keep away from Helen. It was his tone, commanding, almost threatening. You don't need to tell me about your relationship. I'm not interested in her matters. Don't remind me again. I replied coldly. That's better. If you don't listen to me, you'll find out what consequences look like. This time, consider it a warning. If there's a next time, it won't be so simple, he said, his voice darkening. You think it's honorable to use underhanded tactics to steal this order? I shot back. Whatever the case, as long as I win, that's all that matters. I've said what I needed to. Do what you want, he responded. And with that, he hung up the phone. I stood there for a few seconds, lost in thought. The more I reflected, the more I suspected that the car accident from my previous life was his doing. Of course, I had no evidence to support this theory, just a growing suspicion. After thinking for a while, I decided to make some calls to investigate James further. Diego had already looked into him, but his research had been rather superficial. I needed someone to dig deeper, to see if there was anything unusual about this person. I arranged for someone to do this. They assured me it would be no problem, saying, as long as the money is right, we can get anything done. I nodded, urging them to get back to me as quickly as possible. They said they'd have results within a week. After hanging up, a weight settled in my chest. If James was as unscrupulous as I suspected, then Helen's situation around him could be dangerous. Maybe I should warn her, but then again, I wasn't sure it was necessary. In the afternoon, Valentina called and invited me to dinner. She said she was waiting downstairs at the office. I agreed and told her I'd be right down. When I met Valentina, she was wearing a floral dress, her long hair flowing freely, and her face was beaming with a smile. Her skin was fair and delicate, and her features resembled the gentle beauty of a Jiangnan girl, warm and approachable. I'm over here, Augustine. She waved at me. I jogged over to her. She smiled and asked, what do you want to eat today? It's on me. If you're paying, I'll eat anything. I joked. We arrived at the restaurant, and Valentina's smile never wavered. Seeing her so happy, I couldn't help but ask, Valentina, did something good happen today? Just seeing you makes me happy, she replied, which surprised me. Her words also warmed my heart. After she ordered, she passed the menu to me, asking if I had any preferences. I glanced at the menu and noticed she had picked dishes that I liked. I took the menu from her and ordered a few things she liked as well. Seeing you also makes me happy, I said with a smile. Good. Haha, she laughed, then added, Amanda told me you're having a bit of trouble. Do you need my help? I'm always ready to lend a hand. She playfully waved her small, delicate fists. I waved her off. It's not yet time for you to step in. Just then, my phone on the table rang again. I glanced at the caller ID and saw that it was another unfamiliar number. I thought it was probably James calling again. I was about to ignore it when Valentina suddenly said, answer it. I looked at her and saw that she was leaning on her hand, watching me with curiosity. After a brief hesitation, I decided to pick up, putting the phone on speaker. Chapter 16. To my surprise, as soon as I answered the phone, Helen's voice came through. August, it's me. You blocked my contact, so I had to call from a different number. I frowned slightly. What's going on? At this moment, Valentina made a gesture towards me. She placed 2 fingers on her hand and pretended to move her legs, indicating that she was going to step away and give us some space to talk. I quickly shook my head. You don't need to leave, Valentina. Just as I said that, Helen's voice came through again. Is she with you? Yeah, I'm having dinner with Valentina, I replied casually. There was no reason for me to hide my relationship with Valentina. I wasn't interested in dealing with this unhealthy dynamic anymore. Valentina, hearing this, stood up gracefully and waved at the phone. Hi, Helen. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and after a minute or two, Helen spoke again. August, I'm calling just to tell you that whatever is happening with your company has nothing to do with me. It's all James' doing. I know, I said, expressionless. If there's nothing else, I'll get back to my dinner with Valentina. August, just call me by my name, I sighed, cutting her off. Another silence followed, and after a while, she said, I don't have anything else. I'll hang up now. The call ended. Valentina looked at me and said, Augustine, you were so cold just now. I stared at her, cold to other women, but warm to you. Valentina suddenly complained I was being cheesy, and she even blushed. After finishing our meal, Valentina said, if you need money, just let me know. I've got 10 million in my account, and if that's not enough, I can ask my dad for more. I knew her family wasn't struggling financially. After all, Amanda came from a wealthy family, so her best friend's family likely wasn't far behind. Although I didn't need her money right now, hearing her say that made me feel immensely satisfied. No need for the money right now, I said. But in a couple of days, could I visit your parents? Ah, you want to meet my parents? Valentina blushed slightly. That's so sudden. I'm not ready for that. Don't you want me to meet your parents? No, it's just that. I'll call them right now. Her face flushed deeper as she quickly dialed her mother's number. The phone rang, and when it was picked up, Valentina immediately spoke. Mom, I have something very important to tell you. Her mom's voice came through the line. What is it, Valentina? Your future son-in-law wants to come visit you and Dad, Valentina said with a playful glance at me. I suddenly felt nervous at the mention of this. Really? When? Valentina's mom sounded pleased. Seeing her reaction, I realized I needed to take the initiative. Hello, Mrs. Valentina. I'm Augustine. Augustine, you're right there. Valentina's mom seemed surprised. Chapter 17. I responded politely. Yes, Mrs. Valentina. We're having dinner outside right now. I was wondering if you and Uncle might have some time for me to visit soon. Any time works, even tomorrow, Valentina's mom replied. Amanda and Valentina have both spoken so highly of you. I'm curious to see what my son-in-law looks like. She sounded genuinely happy. Seeing her mom so easygoing, My nervousness gradually faded away. All right, I'll come by in the next couple of days, I said. Good. Let me and Valentina's dad prepare. Just let me know when you're coming. Sure. Valentina's mom quickly spoke to her. Valentina, remember, don't bully your future husband. Okay. Don't worry, Mom. How could I bully him? Valentina giggled playfully. The two exchanged a few more words before hanging up the phone. Valentina looked at me. See how my mom is? She hasn't even met you yet, but she's already so warm and considerate. Isn't that a good thing? I smiled. After finishing our meal, Valentina and I took a walk around the area. She seemed to notice I was a bit down, so she quickly took me to an arcade nearby. It was a place I used to frequent as a child, and it did help lighten my mood. Around 9:30 p.m., I dropped her off at her place. About 3 days later, I found a potential business partner. They were willing to engage with us, and their company was far more powerful than Wang's. They even offered us a 30% premium on the original order value, meaning the 50 million we had initially planned for could now easily reach over 60 million. I shared the good news with everyone at the company, and they were absolutely thrilled. I personally took charge of revising the plan, making several adjustments over the course of a week. Eventually, after a few rounds of revisions, we finalized the proposal and signed the contract with this new partner. The deal was secured, everyone was ecstatic, and I decided to reward the team with 2 days off, along with bonuses. Diego came to me and said, Augustine, sometimes things that seem unlucky can bring unexpected benefits. I nodded in agreement. After the 2 days off, we dove right back into work. It was the very next day when I received a call from the investigator I had hired. He said the documents had been sent to me. I agreed and paid the final fee. Opening the file, I found the details on James. As I read through the information, I discovered that James was a man who had climbed the social ladder through his relationships with women. He had spent the money of several women, one of whom had even died after jumping into a river. His real name wasn't James, it was Angelo Lee. I felt my expression shift as I read through the report. This was more surprising than I had expected. The guy had deceived at least 10 women, and now that he was involved with Helen, I couldn't help but wonder if he had similar intentions with her. At first, I wanted to warn Helen right away, but after thinking it over, I realized that both she and I were reborn. She would probably be cautious enough to avoid falling into the same trap. After all, she must have gone through her own set of hardships in her past life. Chapter 18. Perhaps all of this had something to do with James. A month later, we successfully completed the first phase of the project. The client was highly satisfied with our efficiency and the quality of our work. They even mentioned that after this cooperation, they would consider giving us all future projects. This was great news for us. About a week later, I received a call from none other than Wang, the boss who had initially rejected us. I hesitated for a moment when I saw his name on the caller ID, but I still answered. Wang, what's up? How come you're calling me today? It's really tough. The project I handed over to them, they couldn't handle it. I'm stuck here, can't figure this out, Wang said, sounding quite embarrassed. I replied sarcastically, Wang, you're so capable. How did you fail at it? Well, here's the deal. I'll give you the project, but you have to come up with a proposal for me. I won't interfere, and I'll even give you a 10% premium on the price, he said, sounding serious. I thought for a moment and agreed. After all, free money was hard to turn down. I called an emergency meeting with Amanda and Diego. After hearing the news, Diego was furious. Now he wants to backtrack. We should never have worked with them. Amanda rolled her eyes. If there's money to be made, why not? I agreed with Amanda. Exactly. Everyone has worked hard. Let's finish this job for Wang and get it done. The team agreed and left the meeting. That same day, James called again. He immediately started yelling. What's your problem? Stealing the project from me? It's no big deal. It's all about who's better. I replied calmly. Fine. Just wait. You'll pay for this. James threatened. I wasn't happy to hear that. Angelo Lee. There was a long pause on the other end. James seemed confused. Who's Angelo Lee? Who are you talking about? I'm James. Oh, James. Mind your own business, I said before hanging up. Little did I know, that call nearly caused an accident. It was one evening when I was driving home after work. Out of nowhere, a car suddenly swerved into my lane and nearly crashed into me. Thankfully, I was able to dodge it in time, but that near miss made me realize something. James was a very dangerous person. After some careful consideration, I decided to send Helen the information I had on James. What she did with it was her business. I trusted she'd be cautious, as she was no fool and probably hated James just as much as I did. Once I sent the information, I let out a sigh of relief. Everything at the company was going smoothly, and it was growing fast. I also met Valentina's parents, who were incredibly warm and welcoming, especially her mom, who was exceptionally kind to me. Whenever there was nothing else to do, she'd invite me over. and after a few visits, she began asking when Valentina and I would get engaged. I replied, anytime. Soon after, I told my parents about Valentina. They were delighted, though my mom still expressed some regret that I wasn't with Helen. Helen had always been the daughter-in-law my mom had envisioned for me, but when my mom met Valentina in person, she warmed to her instantly. She also began urging me to get engaged to Valentina as soon as possible. With both our parents on board, and with Valentina and me deeply in love, everything was falling into place perfectly. We picked a good date, and about a week later, Valentina and I got engaged. The engagement day was filled with excitement. Amanda and Diego, as our matchmakers, were of course present. After the ceremony, I was utterly exhausted, but the next morning, I woke up to a news headline about James. He had been arrested on charges of fraud and assault. He had scammed over 10 women, and his story quickly went viral, with people across the country expressing their disgust for him. At the same time, I received a call from Helen. August, thank you for helping me, she said softly. I didn't do it for you, I did it for myself, I replied. I found James repulsive, though there was no direct evidence linking him to the car accident in my past life. I could tell by the circumstantial evidence that he was the kind of person who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted, especially after that close call on the road. Helen was quiet for a moment before speaking again. No matter what, I should still thank you. I knew James wasn't a good person. I nodded, unsure of what else to say. We were both silent for a while before she spoke again. August, congratulations on your engagement. Thank you for the well wishes, I replied. I'm about to go study abroad. I plan to learn something new, and if things go well, I might not come back. Her voice seemed to tremble as she spoke. Chapter 19. But no matter what, my relationship with Helen was now nothing more than a thing of the past. Between us, it was as though we had become complete strangers. I wish you all the best, and I hope you find happiness, I said before hanging up the phone. About a month later, Amanda and Diego held their wedding. Valentina and I attended as the best man and maid of honor. In this love story, they had truly done their best to consider and love each other. I couldn't help but feel envious of them. But of course, I also felt grateful to have Valentina by my side at that moment. I held her hand, and as we locked eyes, I thought to myself, this was it. I was going to be happy with her, and I would keep this happiness for as long as I could. Chapter 20. Helen's side story. After Augustine called, I started packing up my office and the adjacent break room. When I wasn't at home, I spent most of my time at the company, but I didn't want him to know that. After all, he had always been so outstanding, and so much had happened between us. My pride constantly reminded me, never lower my head, never admit defeat. Although I was confused about why he suddenly proposed a divorce, a part of me felt a bit relieved. Maybe, after all these years, we were just a couple full of resentment. We never had a chance to live peacefully. Now that we were separating, it might actually be for the best. But when it came time to actually part ways, all the anger and resentment seemed to vanish, leaving behind an indescribable sense of melancholy. I picked up the photo of the two of us on the desk, about to stuff it into the drawer when the phone rang. Hello, is this Augustine's family? Please come to the Central Hospital. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. When I came back to my senses, I was already on my way to the hospital. Honestly, I can't recall much about how I felt at that time. The only thing I remember is that not a single tear fell from my eyes. It wasn't until I came back home, to the place we once shared, that I found myself drawn to his study. The photo album that had been placed at the very bottom of the shelf caught my eye immediately. I remembered the last time I saw that album. It was after a huge argument between us, and now, seeing that album, it felt like he was truly gone. I took a deep breath, opened the album, and the first page was a photo of us when we first met. In the picture, we were just children. The sunlight that day was so bright. Augustine had his eyes slightly lowered, his lashes casting a shadow on his face. It was such a beautiful time. Yes, Augustine and I were never supposed to end up this way. We grew up together. He was my best friend. He was so skilled with his hands. When we went on picnics, he would make a beautiful flower crown for me and put it on my head, calling me his little princess. He was excellent in academics, especially in math. On countless afternoons, he would patiently explain problems to me in the yard, never once showing impatience, even when I was slow to understand. He was a wonderful cook, too. Kung Pao chicken, sweet and sour ribs, all the dishes I loved. He made them so delicious. He would flick his finger on my forehead, but it never hurt. He'd take me to amusement parks and cover my eyes when we entered the haunted house. He'd take me away whenever I argued with my parents. I knew his burdens and responsibilities. He understood my pride and sensitivity. We were, after all, the ones who understood each other best. Then I got into the same university as him. The day he picked out the apartment for me, I was still excited about our upcoming college years together. But then I met another guy. His name was James. He said he liked me, and he took me to the seaside on his motorcycle. The speed was thrilling, and my heart raced. He asked if I liked him too, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I was confused. Before that, I always thought I liked Augustine, so I told James just that. You're just depending on him, aren't you? After all this time, you probably see him as family. Family is not love. Maybe James was right. Perhaps I had confused dependence with love. That evening, James and I sat by the sea, the waves crashing against the rocks beneath our feet. He kissed the back of my hand, and I didn't pull away. Later, I introduced James to my parents. And then, Augustine and I got drunk, and he stayed over at my place. The video from our apartment's elevator soon spread across the university. I couldn't understand why he would do that. Maybe he wants to be with you, James suggested. I was in disbelief. I had known Augustine for so long. I knew he wasn't that kind of person. But that day, it was Augustine who came home with me. And only James. Augustine. And I knew where the apartment was. If you marry Augustine, we'll be able to weather this crisis, my father told me on the phone. I had a vague sense of the truth behind everything. First, the internet and the people around me pressured me with their opinions. Then, it was the survival of the family business. In the span of one night, Augustine seemed to have turned into a completely different person. I didn't understand why, but as a member of the family, I knew I had to do what was expected of me, even if it meant a forced marriage. So I went to find Augustine. After all, he was Augustine. We had grown up together, and I knew he would never treat me badly. He had never treated me badly. Let's get engaged, I told him, and it was clear he was happy. For some reason, I felt a sense of contentment too. Maybe it was because there were finally no more gossiping voices around us. The next time I saw James, it was at my engagement party. The day I decided to approach Augustine, I had already broken up with James. He was upset, but he said he understood my reasons, and agreed to the breakup. When I saw his face, with his unshaven stubble, I knew that he was probably more hurt than he let on. And as for me, how could I be at ease marrying someone else in this situation? But Augustine then surprised me by saying he wanted to cancel the engagement. I was furious, or perhaps, embarrassed. He had pushed me to this point, and now he was acting like the good guy. I thought about him, then thought about James sitting in the corner, drinking his sorrows away. I slammed the door shut. Actually, after marrying Augustine, we were doing fine. He was still the same, never one for sweet words, but he did everything a husband should. It was as if the men who had hurt me so deeply had never been him. But sometimes, even I subconsciously forgot about that incident, and our relationship would be much more harmonious because of it. Until one day, I encountered James again during a social event. He anxiously pulled me aside and showed me that video again. And just like that, everything returned to square one. At that time, I had considered the possibility that since we were already married, Augustine didn't need to bring up the video again. But looking at James, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, I couldn't say a word. I had always felt guilty towards him. In my mind, Augustine was never the kind of person who would do something so underhanded, but he did it. I never imagined Augustine would hurt someone like that. I no longer believed anything he said, and I stopped going home. I withdrew into myself, like a snail retreating into its shell, until one day, Augustine died in a car accident. The police said it happened when he swerved to avoid a group of children. He was such a kind man, I knew that. But he had also hurt me deeply and hurt another person who loved me. I snapped out of it, and the album was still open on the table. The picture of our younger selves was still there, smiling so happily. A tear dropped, blurring the pencil-written words, "I like you." I hurriedly wiped the smudge, then touched my face, realizing I had been crying. But after that, I had an accident and was given a second chance at life. The accident I originally thought was a twist of fate was actually all part of James' plot. It turned out that he never truly liked me. He only wanted my family background. I regretted it all so much, regretted hurting the one who loved me the most, Augustine. For 6 years, I hated Augustine because of James. So when I got a second chance, my first thought was to find Augustine, find my August. And I wanted to start over, but it was too late. He had already found someone else, someone he liked, someone wonderful. She was beautiful, and she was gentle, and Augustine started distancing himself from me. I knew I had hurt him too much, and I didn't blame him. But then James came back into my life. I hated him. I wanted revenge. I prepared a series of plans. I wanted him to fall into the deepest abyss. During this time, my plans were almost exposed, and several times I thought I would fail and never get my revenge. But in the end, Augustine stepped up, giving me the information I needed. Finally, I got my revenge. Afterward, I planned to leave the country to start anew. There was nothing left for me here. I got an opportunity to study abroad, and I knew that once I left, I would never cross paths with Augustine again. But deep inside, I will always wish him a lifetime of happiness.